Why are you blurry? Oh, there we go. I'm starting to realize what this medium is doing to the practice of journaling. The medium is changing what my intent was for this. I intended this to be a way for me to be more proactive about getting my thoughts together every day. And what it actually has turned into is it's turned into me taking time that I would otherwise spend gathering information, and instead I'm talking, often at this point not even about information. So why is that happening? Why am I spending time spitting information out instead of pulling it in? That's not what I want to be doing. It's because of the medium. So two things are happening. One, I'm talking. I shouldn't be talking. I shouldn't be talking. I should be doing a lot more listening than talking. But the only reason I should be talking is to summarize experiences. And if I'm doing this every day, then I'm not really summarizing anything. I'm just platforming my own thoughts. And that's not what I'm trying to do. I have enough of that. My thoughts are not sacred. I'm trying to change my thoughts. I'm trying to expand my understanding. This platform is not doing that for me. I need to spin down my time spent here and spend my time again elsewhere where I was actually growing in knowledge every day. And I do still do that, but the degree to which I am able to do that is handicapped because the amount of time I spend doing this. And because the fact that, like, this is the primary time of me, or every day, that I get to do something that's personal, and I'm spending it talking to myself. Fine. I mean, like, sure, journaling or whatever, that's great, but you should come to the table with something. And the reason I'm so stingy with my journal entries, turns out, is because it takes a long time to absorb information and get to a point where you have something to say. So the medium itself, without even doing this for a reason, without even having some goal or audience to reach, the platform is challenging me, like in very subtle ways, is challenging me to produce content. And it's not even at all something that I'm necessarily interested in doing, but I have dashboards and analytics, and I can see what my engagement is, and I can see, like, and it's like 5 people, right? 5 people have subscribed, maybe 2 or 3 people have ever watched these. I don't know if that one that shows up in the corner is because somebody, like, literally just comes here every time and just turns the volume all the way down just to show their support, or if there's actually somebody there. I don't know if that's a real thing or not, but I don't need to be doing this every day. I genuinely don't need to be doing this every day. And there's a little bit of guilt that's carried over from my lapsing in, this journal I write in irregularly. I'm very proud of the fact that I've covered, how far have I gotten? Yeah, I've gotten over halfway through this journal, which is significant. That's rare. Doing it the whenever I feel like it way. And this one, like I said, I've only gotten how far? It's kind of embarrassing. See, I haven't even gotten this far into the journal. And I've had this journal since it started in December 4th, 2010. Started in 2010. So this journal is over a decade condensed into this many pages. So that, to me, like, that sort of feels shameful, right? That over the course of a decade, I've only had that much to say in my regular journal. But and the reason I feel ashamed about that is because I kept a daily journal in high school, and I stopped keeping a daily journal as I went into college because, for one, the internet, and I had a Xanga after I had a paper journal, and then I kept a book of poetry that I explained one time here, like the the more things got difficult as a college student, the less I wanted to write in my book of poetry because I didn't want to admit to the fact that I had bad days. That felt like damaging my personal brand, you know, like of somebody who experiences life optimistically and who believes in some sort of divine favor. To report that you've had bad days seems contrary to your stated purpose. So I feel guilty when I don't write. And to have that journal that has that many entries in it, that few entries in it over the course of over a decade, feels kind of shameful. But then again, when I don't worry about that, and when I instead just think, I'm not going to talk about myself, I'm just going to talk about things that excite me with no frame of reference whatsoever, then I write. I'm not afraid to write about it. It's whatever the heck I feel like saying. Because all of those thoughts that are in that design journal are inspired by something. They're me coming back to my journal because I had something that I took away from something I was experiencing somewhere else. I got an idea for something, and so I put it in there. This is becoming more me talking for the purpose of talking, me sharing with you the shape of the inside of my brain. And that's not really good. It's not really good. You don't need to know what the shape of my brain is. And maybe there's some vanity, I guess, looking back for myself to know what the shape of my brain was at any given moment. But again, to future me, don't waste your time caring about what the shape of my brain was, because it's not sacred now. It won't be sacred then. It was never sacred. You know, what my perspective is. The only important thing is there something here to learn? Is there some experience that I'm reporting? Is there some knowledge that I've gained that I can articulate and condense? You know, that's a really good value in videos like this, is if I've read 10 books and I can condense those findings to you into something that is an articulated thought that's meaningful, that might apply to your circumstances with some references that you can then go look up for more understanding later, that's value. I'm now providing value. I'm doing a literature review for you. You know, that's good. But me talking every day without absorbing information is not good. So this is me deciding that based on the last couple of weeks of doing these videos, that I don't think that there's value in me continuing to do this every day. The only value that there could possibly be in that is if I was following YouTube's formula for being engaging content. And I'm not trying to be engaging content, because the only content that I can possibly come to you with every single day is whatever I bring to the table naturally. And I'm trying to tell you, don't go on what you bring to the table naturally. Go learn some crap. Go experience some things, understand what other people are going through, compare your experiences, have genuine interactions with those people, broaden your horizons, challenge your perspectives, and educate yourself. Give yourself a better experience with relation to the things that have happened in the world and the societies and the structures that we've chosen to have them in, the ways that things have gone wrong, really, really wrong over the course of history. I think I mentioned one of the things I mentioned was, if you want a starting place, go to Wikipedia and look up the definitions of liberalism and conservatism, because those are two words that we use a lot in politics in America, right? Liberal and conservative, those have a meaning, but again, the meaning that we assign to them is only just that one means specifically not the other, and that's all they've come to mean anymore. Those words have real meanings. And if, like one of my friends said, when I mentioned this to him, he said, oh, wow, the first 4 paragraphs of liberalism on Wikipedia are just blue text, because there's so many links to so many different things, because it itself is a reaction to a bunch of different movements, thoughts, feelings, times, places, and peoples in history. So all of this is bound to real actual stuff that's happened to humans. And these are thoughts that came out of the best thinkers of some period of time in response to the things that happened to them, for good and for ill. And this is an evolving conversation. We're still humans. Humans are still on the earth for a while. We're still learning about stuff. We're still making decisions. We're still trying, and we're still failing. We're still thinking about these things. You're very much a part of this. You know, like, you're alive. We're all alive. and history is not something that happened. It's happening. Life has not been figured out. You know, we can do better. We should do better. We have to try to do better. I talk about my book all the time instead of actually finishing it. So I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop doing this for a while until I finish this book. Is what I'm trying to say. That's spoilers. Um, I think I mentioned at some point earlier that sometime following the election, which was on November 3rd, 2020, after that, I fell in love with a game called Disco Elysium and utterly rocked my world. And it's a very, graphic game, I think is an understatement. It's not it's not necessarily a fun, family adventure. There's a lot there, and it's probably darker than it needs to be, but there's so much there. Like, I was experiencing some of the concepts that it's fiction, right? But I was experiencing some of these concepts as if they were fictional, as if they were being described in a very heavily fictional way because it was a fictional story. And then it prompted me to try to learn the real world equivalents of some of these concepts. And it really was the real world. They were talking about real stuff. And I was like, wow, these definitions are so abstracted away from how I'm used to experiencing these things that I thought that they were just borrowing some words and making them up for the purpose of fiction. And no, like, they're dealing with real ideologies and real movements and real the territories are fake and the names of the places are fake and the actual events in history are fictional, but everything else, the ideologies that people practice and their qualities are genuine. And that messed with me. Like, I didn't approach it that way. I was like, oh, this is a very interesting avant-garde way of bringing all these definitions, these words that I feel like I have a working understanding of, and putting them together in a way that, alternate history or whatever. And no, it's our alternate history in that the events are different, but those thoughts, liberalism and, everything else, when they come together and, they meet in these different cultures, this is how they interact. And that challenged me to try to understand better, I guess. So it was a really good thing. I think that was really the catalyst for all of this. Well, no, it wasn't the catalyst for all of it. The catalyst for all of it was, oh God, what's happening to the world? And I have a child, and I need to do something about this. And then, a couple of years actually of agony and trying to find a home for these feelings and thoughts and desires to make the world better, and then finding that the place that I would normally go to with these sorts of impulses about making the world better, which is my home church, just wasn't going in the direction that the situation called for. The situation called for radical goodwill, and instead there was division happening, division and hierarchical authority and violence and threats of violence, and like all the things that I did not. So I'm learning a whole bunch about how our institutions, all of our institutions, have these dual heritages, right? The United States is born out of the idea of liberalism, of individual liberties, and of for and by the people, a democracy or a democratic republic, but also empire, because we were a colony of British Empire. We were part of their expansion to conquer the world and extract its resources and abuse its peoples. And that just happened to not work out here so well for several reasons. And we rebelled against that. So it was this like individualism in the face of empire. But as we grew up, we very clearly retained both. We behaved in accordance with both our dad and our mom's families. And it's the same thing with with our faith communities. Christ is a radical figure of goodwill toward all people, regardless of their position, that we ought to do before anything else, care for the least of us, and that there's no such thing as a position. You can't earn a position in the kingdom of God. You don't be better than somebody. That doesn't exist. We're all garbage. We're all human. And anybody who declares themselves higher is going to be put in their place. Like you ought to always do for the least. And just because you do that doesn't make you special. It doesn't change your identity because you did some things right. Understand that when you do for others, you're doing for your sorry state. Like it is a very social, welfare-based ideology, but at the same time, the world that consumed Christ, the hierarchical temple environment and the hierarchical Roman Republic environment, those and obviously the centuries since, like things that are very not like Christ are a part of faith. There are some things that are very top down. There are some things that are very holier than thou about the way that things are practiced. I mean, how comfortable would you feel if somebody was giving a sermon and when they got down, you told them that maybe they had the wrong perspective? Is that your place? Would you ever do that? How would they respond to that? How would the rest of the community respond to that? Anyway, there's these dual heritages, and I think we do have good ideas here and there, but I think that I guess you could call it human nature, gets the best of us. We want I guess in many cases to be the boss, to be in charge, to be the king, to be the one with everything, to be the top ape on the ball, and that tarnishes everything we touch. I don't know how I got on that path. Again, this is not a place for. I'm not trying to platform myself. All right, so one way that I could turn this around is I could turn this into something where I have a conversation with somebody all the time. But again, the reason I would be doing that, to change the format of my very purpose in doing this, just so that I can keep doing it, is not me having a realization about the way I want to do my journaling. It's me trying to find an excuse to stay engaged with this medium, because I see every time I close this out that how many people watched and how long they watched for, and then I close this tab and I see all of my videos and how people engage over time and what my release schedule is for video. It's like, I mean, it's beautiful analytics, really. From an analytics perspective, I'm very jealous. But from a, like, what am I doing here? That's what they want. That's what they want. They want content. They want people producing content uploaded into their system, and then they want people to engage with that content. They want to drive engagement. So if anything that I'm doing drives engagement to the YouTube platform, then it's doing them a service, and I am in some way increasing the value of their brand by participating. I don't care. It's not why I'm here. So I have to let go of whatever pressures exist from my journaling days and whatever pressures exist in my analytics and say, it's okay if I don't upload once in a while. That's not going to drive people away. That's not going to cause me to miss out on people who might engage and give me some feedback. And even if it did, that's not the purpose of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to document my thoughts as I have them. And if I don't have thoughts, I don't need to document anything, right? But also, if I do have thoughts, but they're not in any way helping people get to the next level of their thinking, then keep them myself, right? I always have something to say. It doesn't mean anybody needs to listen. All right, so speaking of always having something to say, what does this say? This is my notes for the day. It's not just instinct versus intelligence. Instinct is what you do. It's what you're inclined to do first and most. And that is an expression of what you know. What you know is not a number, a 0 to 100 scale of how much intelligence you've amassed. What you know is a product of ideas, ideas put out into the world by others. Okay, so I guess at some point throughout the day, I got the idea that there is this argument that either you're intelligent or like you're working from a position of either intelligence or instinct, right? That might be a framework that a lot of people feel comfortable abusing when they want to introduce some ideology or topic or subject matter, that like we have an instinct, or we overcome our instinct through intelligence. Is our instinct good? Should our instinct be accepted? Should we fight our instinct? Is it noble to fight your instinct? What do you fight your instinct with? Is the opposite of instinct intelligence? If you are an intelligent creature, does that mean that your instinct is therefore diminished? And if your instinct is increased, does that mean that your intelligence is diminished? Or does your instinct mean that your kindness or your goodwill or your goodness is diminished? Is instinct the opposite of goodness? Is instinct the opposite of intelligence? Which of these should we venerate? And when we're tired of engaging things so deeply all the time, is it acceptable to act out of instinct? Is instinct the way that we know who we genuinely are? And is that important? So like there's these ideas of one versus the other, either instinct versus morality, or instinct versus intelligence, or intelligence versus morality in the case that you think that somehow morality and instinct are linked. Does it have to do with how much energy you have? Does it have to do with how patient you are with people? I was trying to say that intelligence, for one, is not it's not a single value. You know the things that you've been introduced to, and you might very well be very good at processing information. You might be very good at processing single information deeply. You might be very good at processing broad information in a shallow manner. You might be good at understanding your own inner workings in your brain. You might be good at understanding the inner workings of other people's brains, or how that comes out in their actions or expression. Either way, none of those things necessarily control what information you're exposed to. So even if you are very good at reasoning about these different things in these different ways, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are more complete in your understanding than somebody else is, who happens to have different experiences and understanding than you do. Maybe you've read every odd book in existence, and they've read every even book in existence, and your intelligence is not comparable, right? What you know is a product of ideas, ideas put out in the world by others. Some people know some things, other people know other things. Their instincts are different. Okay, so your instinct is a product of the things that you've absorbed over time. So you could say that in moving forward intellectually with things, your instinct sort of trails behind. The intelligence is what you've learned in your head, and the instincts is what you've learned through practice. So your reach exceeds your grasp. Your reach is your intelligence, and your grasp is your instinct. But they're tied to one another. They're going in the same direction. The things that you intellectually pursue eventually become intuitive and instinctual. So you build instinct. Instinct is a product of your ideas. And somewhere in there is identity. What do you want to say about identity, right? If you've moved yourself in a certain direction from your starting point, then that must represent your identity in some way. The things that you've been exposed to and the ways that you've pursued them, and now the ways that your instinct expresses itself in your behaviors and actions, I guess somewhere in there is identity. Because if you always do this and they always do that, there's something different about you from them. And that has something to do with who you are. And that's your identity. You have come to know some things, and you know those things are different from the other things that others know, and thus you have an identity in contrast to others. And that identity is tied to your instinct. And so humans have opposing instincts, contrary to one another. So intelligence is not, you don't person who read every odd book and person who read every even book don't have some metric of intelligence relative to one another. This person doesn't have 50% intelligence and this one's 76% intelligence. They've absorbed ideas that were put out into the world by other people. They both have done so effectively. Their ideas contrast because they have different information, they have different frames of reference. And their intelligence that they develop over time becomes intuitive, which becomes instinct. And their instinct is not human nature, it's an expression of the things that they've come to intuit over time. So you can have people whose instincts, in fact, you do, you always do, have people whose very base instincts are wholly contradictory to one another. People can tell me, oh yeah, well, if you were in this situation, you have to admit that you would act like this. No, I wouldn't. Like the information that you've absorbed is not the information that I've absorbed. And therefore your instinct is not my instinct. Because your intelligence is not my intelligence. Because it's not one person having more information than one other person, it's the information that you've absorbed, which is a product of the ideas that you're exposed to, which is a product of the ideas that people have put out there into the world, and the things that you've allowed yourself to interact with and experience. So one should accrue intelligence, read as many things as you possibly can, absorb some body of knowledge, and allow your instinct to be shaped by the best of this. Spend your time and energy and attention on the things that are helpful and beneficial and contribute toward finding solutions for yourself and for others, for society and for the planet, and share those things with other people, and challenge your own perspective by exposing yourself to others and their perspectives. Never feel like it's my intelligence versus this other person's intelligence and one of them is going to win. No, you come to share ideas with one another and walk away better. You can both walk away better from that interaction. You can learn something from somebody who's not had the same experiences as you, right? That should be obvious. That should be obvious. So it's not a matter of, well, let me get out my Rolodex and find out how many books I've read, and then you get out yours and I find out how many books you've read before we decide who's going to learn something in this conversation, who's got the more right to deciding what the conclusion should be. No. Everybody's coming to the table with different experiences. Everybody's coming to the table having absorbed different ideas, and as a result has different identities and different instincts. And we should share those with one another for mutual benefit, to help understand how we can be more of a benefit to one another, more of a service to one another, and to all of society, and all of humanity, and all of the globe. I feel like I said something in there that was relevant, but I'm over it. I'm past it. Okay. Again, I am talking too much. I'm doing this too often. I'm not here to make a YouTube channel. I don't care about the YouTube analytics. I need to spend more time reading. I need to spend less time talking. So if you haven't commented on videos of mine so far, please comment on this one and let me know if you think that there's some way in which this can be more of value. In the meantime, I am going to change my information in to information out ratio and spend probably 1/3 of my evenings doing this and 2/3 reading moving forward. So maybe every third night I'll come back and do this. Not religiously every third night, but expect me to take more nights off in the near future, and that's appropriate. That's good. It means I'm not feeding myself and anybody else who's watching garbage. And it means I'm not platforming myself at the expense of somebody else who actually has something to say. Okay, have a good evening, everybody, and I will see you sometime in the near future.